everybody, and welcome into Blue Jays Today, where today, everybody, we are going to be following along and covering the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. extension watch. This is the deadline day, folks. There is no more time. If he does not sign in the next 5 to 6 hours or so, then he will almost assuredly be hitting free agency after the following season, and that is just nightmare scenario, nightmare fuel for Toronto Blue Jays fans. It's not somewhere I want to be. It's not somewhere Adam wants to be. So if it's going to get done, it has to get done this evening. We're going to be following along with all of that. If there is any breaking news, we're obviously going to be, covering it here firsthand. Whilst we are waiting, we're going to have a couple of guests. We got Nick Alberga, big hockey guy, but also enjoys his baseball as well. We also got Jim, Ballcap Sports, jumping in at some point tonight. Should make for a good stream, a good watch along, and hopefully we finish tonight feeling happy.
Yeah, hopefully, guys, because there's a reality where we go live tonight and nothing at all happens. And if you guys are OGs here on Blue Jays Today, we often go live, and sometimes not a lot of things happen. Sometimes they do. Hey, we had the Anthony Santander thing happen while we were live on our Blue Jays Today show.
Right.
That was like the one thing that happened in years. So you never know. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen tonight.
Here's what I will say, though. In other streams, right, when you're doing like a free agent watch along, things are ramping up, and it's like, Juan Soto's going to sign. And then he doesn't sign anywhere. Well, then you actually watched for nothing. But if nothing happens tonight, something still happened, which is that he's going to hit free agency. So even if nothing transpires, something major just did with the team. So regardless of what happens this evening, a big milestone in Toronto Blue Jays history will be made.
Absolutely. Let's give a big shout out to everybody who's in here right now. The 332 people in here. Daniela Castro, Joseph Edward, Mr. Agent Jid. Jid saying, I've already been prepared for him to leave. Ross is a genuine idiot. And I think, yes, that is true. He is a big idiot, but we also have to be, prepared for some good things. And I think us Blue Jay fans, after all the years of chasing Ohtani and Soto and many other big free agents, why can't we just get this one thing done, especially with our homegrown talent who wants to be a Blue Jay for the rest of his career? That would be great. That would be a big win. And yes, does that change anything for this upcoming season? Maybe you can make some arguments. Yes, it does. But I think it changes everything for the future of this team. And that's what I mostly want.
Also, Davey Boy saying in other news, Rafael Devers says he won't play first base or DH. Interesting stuff right there. Drama out of Boston.
I know that I saw a lot of people saying like, oh, well, we'll take him, like Blue Jays
Devers
perspective. Yeah, we'll take Devers. Come play with Vladdy for the rest of your career.
Yeah, of course. That? No, that'd be insane, dude. But honestly, quick shout out over there to the Boston Red Sox, man. Do not sleep on them in any capacity. I've been doing a lot of research into that team recently, and holy shit, they're a lot better than you may think they are, man.
I think they're going to be a playoff team, and that's I don't think that's a hot take at all. Let me just show you guys here. I have this up because I figured we'd want to kind of just set the table, set the drama a little bit. We've got a little bit of a countdown timer.
Oh, geez.
For the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. extension. 6 hours, 54 minutes, and 31 seconds, as you can see right here. It's time. I mean, if we got to get this deal done, it's going to happen within that time frame right here. Big stuff coming, everybody. Big stuff. And I'm excited to share it all with you guys right here. So if you don't go anywhere, we'll be live for the long haul, unless things really die off. But we'll be here for the signing.
We'll see how things go, and obviously when it does happen, if we kill this live stream at some point, we will immediately be hopping back on and talking about it thoroughly. Should the deal get done? I love that timer up there, man. Let's keep that up there for a second.
I like it.
Now we were live earlier today for our Blue Jays Today show, and we were talking about where we're at. The temperature check of Guerrero. It's been a couple hours since then. Nothing has transpired whatsoever. I mean, we've seen some people saying that they want it to happen, but nobody, reputably has come out and said the deal's progressing or talks are progressing or anything. And that's okay because, especially stuff with an extension, when it's in-house like this, maybe there's not a lot of stuff getting leaked, right? Whereas with a free agent, this guy's coming over to, flying into Toronto or whatever, and, some stuff gets leaked. With Guerrero, I mean, they have meetings all the time. Nobody might know anything. So I get it. But we are, as you have up here, just 6 hours away right now. Have you changed at all since this afternoon?
No, I'm kind of the same. Obviously, again, like I mentioned earlier this afternoon, the closer I get to deadline, the more my anxiety kicks in. But I still think the odds don't really change. Hell, I mean, I've even come to to accept the fact that what if we hear it announced tomorrow? You know, like they get a deal done, but they just keep it hush hush.
Right.
Like, no one's really jumping the gun right here saying, yeah, we've got a deal done immediately once it's signed pen to paper. What if they're working on it late in the evening and then tomorrow they're like, you know what, let's announce this tomorrow. You know, obviously that would scare the shit out of me because I'd be like, well, I guess the Vladdy extension is
over.
And now I'm thinking like we're gonna go chase him in free agency.
Yeah.
But you know, that'd be an awesome turn of events.
Yeah. Also, we're getting some people in the chat saying, is it at all? I know we're on a weird software right now. Is it at all possible to get that in the top corner of the counter?
No.
Okay.
No,
so we won't have it up the whole time. Then we'll kind of flip back and forth because I do see people saying we're very small right now, and I get it.
Oh, you want to see us? That's really nice.
Very nice. Yeah. I mean, for me right now, I'm still 50-50. I am starting to lean a little bit more on the no extension side of things, and you know, like I think that's kind of a universal feeling right now among many of the analysts, actually, like from some of the guys that we've talked to and just across the board. It's like, yeah, like, you know, you're here right now unless they go above and beyond. And are they willing to do that? You know, Guerrero is going to end up being a free agent. And, and I understand all of that. I hope that's not the case. Again, I've said this time and time again. If I was Guerrero, I would want to mitigate my risk. I wouldn't want to, if there's any number on the table that starts with a 4, I am smashing the accept button.
Yeah.
If it doesn't start with a 4, then I would need to have some serious opt-outs in it to, you know, actually consider it. But if it starts with a 4, I would probably be in.
Yeah, and that's universal too. And I feel like if Vladdy and his camp feel that same way, where look, we got to mitigate any risk here, then they would absolutely smash it. Now I know some people are saying in the chat, Edward right here saying the champagne bottle is back. That's right. That's right. It's back. It's not necessarily champagne. It's more like a brut wine. Is it like bubbly?
It's like a sparkling wine. Yeah.
Okay, sparkling wine. You got the Vladdy bottle right here, everybody. It's a special golden bottle, different than our other ones. So if he does sign tonight, we'll open that bad boy up. So hopefully that brings us some good luck. We had one popping earlier this year. So hopefully we get a second one. There's a couple things we have to run through tonight. Again, 5:30, we're going to have Nick Alberga on. Alberga on. And so until then, let's just look around the league. We did get something from Hector Gomez.
Yeah.
But it wasn't anything.
It's not an update. It's not what we want to hear. And
not...
like, listen, Hector, if you're going to come out, you're going to talk about Vlad. I need to know that it is either happening or it is not happening, my dude. Because, like, if honestly, Hector might be one of the first guys to have this, just because he is so connected with some of those Dominican players. And I do imagine that he's got a lot of connections, not only to Guerrero, but to just the Guerrero family as a whole. Like, so I honestly, he could be one of the quickest people to have this, but we're going to be monitoring him a lot.
I honestly hope tonight we get a tweet or some sort of from like Hector Gomez just being like, Jays fans, stay tuned or something like that, you know, even though it's, you know, I don't want to fully buy into it, I would get a little bit hyped. So this is what Hector Gomez was sharing on his Twitter right here. It's just a photo of Vlad saying Vladdy Jr.'s deadline for extension is coming. Okay, deadline for extension. When I first read that really quickly, when I brought this up initially, I was like, it's coming? No, that's what my brain wanted to read. This is also a really badass photo, I gotta admit. Like, you got the, you know,
super badass photo. You wouldn't want to leave that behind.
No, exactly.
You wouldn't want to leave that behind, Guerrero. Dude, that's where you grew up, buddy.
Exactly. You don't want to leave the Toronto Blue Jays behind, okay? You know, this is your team. This is your squad. You want to be here, right? So that was the latest. That was all Hector Gomez came out and said right there. I really hope, again, we do get something.
Now, Greg in the chat right here is saying, I don't get how you think it's 50-50. He is signing back 100%. You think Santander and Scherzer have come here if Vladdy wasn't signing? I think, listen, Greg, I hear where you're coming from there. The Scherzer signing has nothing to do with it, though, because he's on a 1 year, and Guerrero's going to be here for that 1 year regardless. So Scherzer's got absolutely nothing to do with it. Now, could you argue to me that that part of the meetings of Anthony Santander was the Toronto Blue Jays telling him, we're going to do everything in our power to keep Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? I could believe that. And I could see how, you know, that would be important to him. But ultimately, like, Guerrero doesn't answer to Anthony Santander. You know, like, ultimately, Vladdy needs to look out for himself and get himself the best deal. So, I mean, the Toronto Blue Jays could have told Santander that they're going to do everything in their power. And maybe they feel like they are doing that right now. but it still might not result in an extension happening. Maybe it happens in free agency, like the Aaron Judge thing did with the New York Yankees. That is still a possibility. But I don't think that that just saying, well, because those guys came here, Guerrero is going to sign back.
Yeah,
is a fair argument.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Guerrero's got to do what's best for him. And just because you're playing with Anthony Santander isn't going to convince really or move the needle. Really, I mean, you could go play with Juan Soto, or Rafael Devers.
That's the thing.
I mean?
Like you're genuinely going to have your pick of the litter next year. So yeah, Santander's a great player, and you like Toronto, and that's really cool. I think it would have done a lot more if they brought Teo back, because that they are like close buddies, and like maybe you could argue that is something that he might not necessarily have with like some of the other guys. But yeah, ultimately, like, he is going to get his pick of the litter: Boston, New York, other New York, maybe even LA, right? So yeah,
well, we'll see what happens. That's what we're watching for, baby. Also, Joe Random with the 279 dono saying, I'm gonna miss Vladdy, man. It was a good run. Hey, Joe Random,
it ain't over yet, buddy. Man. It ain't over yet.
I know. I just love where everyone either is, actually, I shouldn't say that. Some people are with us in the whole 50-50 thing, but some people are either 100% or 0%. Interesting to see. I mean, it all depends, I think, on how you feel. It has nothing to do with, I think, what's happening. I think it has to do with how you feel.
Also, too, the one thing that I do want to impart on everybody right here is we still have, at minimum, a whole year of Vladdy to watch.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's still going to be a worst case scenario, a full season of Guerrero in a Toronto Blue Jays uniform, which I'm going to thoroughly enjoy, man. I'm going to thoroughly enjoy watching that. And if it does end up being, and I still think that, more times than not, he will be with Toronto, whether it be through extension or through re-signing. I still think more times. But if it actually turns out to be the last year of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. with the Toronto Blue Jays, I will thoroughly enjoy that. And I will, should he not get extended tonight, walk into the season with that in mind. So that's like every time he comes up, this could be the end. So enjoy it.
I know it'll make you feel grateful for sure. I'll be scared as hell because I mentioned in a couple of video rooms, every single thing that happens with Guerrero this year is going to mean so much more. I mean, with this entire team, really, like, if we don't get this extension done, this is the last dance of Bo and Vlad, potentially, because odds are you're really going to extend both in this offseason.
Right.
Probably not, right? So this is probably it. So everything that happens with Bo and Vlad, it's going to be it, and it's going to mean a lot more. It's going to mean, whether they do good or bad. They do good, maybe, the team does good, and then we go on a playoff run, and then maybe things change and things move momentum. But if we do bad and we're in the same position we are last year, well, then we might be looking at a different situation this offseason where both of them want to go. If they really see this situation and we're shit, we have no prospects coming up, then they go to free agency, they get better offers, then they might want to leave. But if they have a little taste of what could be, maybe things are different.
Yeah. We do have Shane in here asking a very good and valid question. So you don't think they will consider trading him if they can't re-sign him? Now, that is completely dependent on the state of the team, in my opinion. They have made it clear that, based off of these offseason moves, that at this current moment in time, regardless of extension or no with Vladdy, they want to be a competitive ball team in 2025. Now, if in the first 2 months, Gausman goes down and Bassett sucks and Bo Bichette's not who we thought, and we are falling, but we're 5th place in the division. If that happens and everything hits the fan, and there's no extension, then yes, there will be talks and they will consider it and everything like that. But it's going to require us to be, out.
It would have to be so out, and we'd have to get the right deal because, I mean, they said before they want a monster deal, in return for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Because again, Ross Atkins, Mark Shapiro, their jobs kind of depend on Vladdy staying here or not. And yeah, if you sell him off and you get a good deal in return, is that going to be good enough to keep your job here? I don't know. That's a tough sell.
Another thing to bring up in that scenario, should they, like, if that was actually the case, the 2 months after the trade deadline of baseball, they would make no money, like zero. You know what I mean? Like, you thought last year was bad. Like when they sold everybody off and there was nobody in the sedans and nobody was watching all that shit. If they trade Guerrero, that is the ultimate. We don't care. We're tanking. And after last year, where the revenue probably dipped relatively significantly, and especially in the second half, do they want to have that revenue dip again?
Yeah, because I'll say this: the moves they made this offseason were enough to convince me that, like, okay, let's go fill up the stadium again. You know, whereas like last year, I was like, well, no one's going to come to the ballpark, you know, based on what we did so far this offseason. When I mean last year, I mean like December, November. But now in January, we've made some moves. February made some moves, so that's great. We'll see what happens. It'll be interesting. Also, big shout out to Master Flip 199 Dono saying tick tock. Yeah. TikTok is right, buddy. Also, shout out to Justin the Nick of Time with a $2 dono saying, do you think Bichette leaving has a role in this? I don't think Bichette really has a role in Vladdy staying. I think Vladdy staying has a role in Bichette staying, because if what he's saying is true, is I want to play with Vladdy for my whole career. If they sign an extension with Guerrero and they calculate some numbers and they go, hey, Bo, looks like we can actually give you X amount, or depending on whatever it is that he does this year. I think that conversation will happen in the offseason. I don't think we're extending him before the season or during the season. If it's in the offseason, it's like, hey, Bo, we have this amount and you can play Vladdy forever, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Then I think, yeah, that probably has more impact. But yeah, not the other way.
Now I do want to bring this up right here. Can we flash over to Joe Siddle's Twitter? Because he actually made he was talking about this, and we really respect Joe Siddle's opinion about, you know, just Toronto Blue Jays baseball in general. Like, the guy knows ball. It's in his replies, actually. It was not too far away. Yeah,
like this guy. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So somebody reached out to Joe Siddle and asked him, hey, what are your thoughts on this, man? Like, is he going to get extended or no? And Joe is on the side of, well, he thinks he's probably going to go to free agency.
Right. It looks like my computer's glitching right now, everybody, so I can't actually bring it up.
Okay, well, don't worry about it then. I'll just read it off then. But effectively, Joe Siddle said, he says, I don't think that he's going to resign. He's hoping that he signs like everyone else, but not expecting it. He feels like he's going to enter free agent market after that 2020 after 2025 with where the prices has gone. And then he says, like, just like everybody, we're gonna have to wait and see. He goes on to say that it's a two-way street. He's earned the right to choose. Worst case, they use that $400+ million on several other good players. So I assume, you know, he's talking next off season, you know, Toronto would go out and make, you know, a couple other different big splashes, which, you know, okay, that's something. Not Guerrero, but it's something. Seems like they will always have that financial might that should allow them to compete. So Joe's on the more cynical side of things.
No, and I think I gotta agree with him, and I understand where he's coming from. Also, too, I gotta say this: I hate the idea if you lose Bo and Vlad, mostly Vlad. I hate the idea that, like, you're going to go and try and patch a team together with free agency. Like, look at how much money we've spent so far. We're like, what, the 5th highest payroll in baseball right now? I'm kind of just pulling that number out of my ass. It's up there. It's like a top 5, top 8. And you are projected to be like a slightly over 500 team. That goes to show that your prospect system is garbage. And by going out and spending all that $400 million on, like, more just like a little bit of average, a little bit above average players, like, what does that do? Like, that's mediocrity again. So I hate that idea. Spend it on Vlad, develop until Vlad gets old and can't be Vlad anymore, and have a new wave coming.
Ultimately, I mean? Like, the best thing, unless you are the LA Dodgers, in which case you can do whatever the fuck you want. But the best way to build a team is to draft and develop, and then fill in your minor holes with free agents, right? That is the ultimate way to go about doing things. Now, if the Blue Jays lose Vladdy, then they've effectively lost their draft and develop aspect of their team.
Right.
And we just immediately turn into this, like, medley of things that we're hoping fit together, but probably won't. Quick shout out here to Yeti with the $9.99 dono saying, I've been a hardcore Blue Jays fan for about 6 years, and in recent off seasons with the management has filled my heart with disappointment. I hope that tonight is not one of those times. Thank you guys. Well, thank you for the donation. I certainly hear you, and you are heard, I think, across the board from Blue Jays fans on a lot of that. I mean, we've missed out on a ton of free agents. I will give the management a little bit of credit that they still are spending, you know, and this offseason they have gone out and they have made moves and they have spent, but the ultimate move that everybody needs to feel good about this squad in the future is Vlad.
And I've heard everybody say, like, oh, if Vlad goes, I go as a fan. And, you know, that's totally, you're right. I mean, when I think about some of my favorite teams that I don't really watch, you know, super attentively, or maybe I do, but, like, you know, it isn't my full-time job. If they trade away or get rid of some of the star players, and, like, what am I really watching for right now, at least, right? Like, maybe I'm a true fan. I stick through the hard times, but baseball's different. I got to watch 162 games of garbage. for 6 months, like I can't do that. And who am I cheering for? Like if Bo and Vlad go, who's left that I really care about? I mean, we'll find out after this season, but as of right now, who?
No, it really is like a you're gonna lose fans for it.
You're gonna lose fans.
And I hope that factors into all of this, because ultimately, like that could help us make this deal happen. Now, somebody in the chat just said Heyman bomb. I'm gonna double check and see. There was only one person saying it, so I kind of am disregarding that there is in fact a Heyman bomb here. No, it doesn't look like it. Bomb. I wish there was, buddy. Trust me, I truly wish there was.
So right now we have about 8 minutes until we get Nick Alberga on the show at 5:30. So I saw some people in the chats asking to talk about this. So why don't we talk about it? It's very minor because it is a minor league deal. But we did make a signing right after our Blue Jays Today show. We signed right-handed pitcher Jacob Barnes to a minor league contract. Now I'm gonna get the window up in a moment. My computer's very slow. I had to edit 4 podcasts today, everybody. So it was like, three.
It's been hard at work.
3 with going live now for the second time. So it's now, I'm starting to notice it's starting to get real beat up.
Yeah,
here we go.
Going in overdrive.
I know. So yes, Jacob Barnes to a minor league deal with an invite to spring training. Now, I hope you guys can see this part right here. Yes, you can. This is Jacob Barnes' career numbers. He's a guy. You know, he's 30. He's going to be 35 years old this year for the Toronto Blue Jays. It's going to just be depth in the system. That's why it's a minor league deal. So I wouldn't think about it too much. But when that came out, when I saw official by the Toronto Blue Jays, I panicked.
Me too.
I panicked. I was like, oh my God. Yeah. We both in our rooms. Our rooms are right over here. And then here's our set right here. Both at the same time, Nick and I were like, oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. We got a little clickbaited by it. Yeah. But ultimately, he's a guy, and as we've been saying, the bullpen still needs help. I mean, it's better than what it was, but it still desperately needs additions and breakouts. And you know, I'm not saying that guy is going to break out, but he could. You know, similarly with Amir Garrett, right? He could, and he could help us. So you're going to see a lot more moves like that. I think, like minor leaguer, you know, depth bullpen dudes, because ultimately, you know, like you look at the depth, and there isn't any. Who if let's say 2 or 3 guys on the bullpen get injured, who comes up now? I don't know. I actually don't know.
Actually, Adam Macko just got hurt today, and he has to go under surgery. That was the one guy I was like, oh, like the one prospect bullpen guy that we have. Maybe he'll finally come up after a couple of years after the Teoscar Hernandez trade.
Nope.
But he has a torn meniscus. Got to go under the knife. So we're not going to see him this year, unfortunately.
Wow, torn meniscus. That's a while.
That's a big time. That's basically the whole year.
Shout out to Joe Random right here, $6.99 dono saying if Vladdy hits free agency, what do you guys think the odds are that we win him back? That's a great question. Something that I think we're going to be asking our 2 guests today as well. For me, it all depends on the state of the team, right? Did we have a good year? Did we have a bad year? Did we make playoffs? If we made playoffs, did we win a playoff game?
Yeah.
What did some of the other teams that might be in the Guerrero sweepstakes do? The Mets. What were they do? What were did the Red Sox pop off and do what, you know, I'm kind of thinking that they could do and win like 90 plus games and look really good? Or were they trash? And, you know, like there's so many variables in this. I would argue that Guerrero, at least today on February 17th, likes Toronto and wants to be there.
Yeah, like I would say like right now it's 50-50, but that's just for this deadline. I'm talking about the entire tenure we have him up until he hits free agency this upcoming fall and winter. Like I still think it's more likely than 50-50 that we get him back. Like it just feels like both sides both want it to happen. It's just we got to come to an agreement on a deal. It's like we've seen it all these off seasons. Both sides, you know, whether it be the Blue Jays or the Mets or the Red Sox, whatever, they both are of mutual interest. It's just we're working out these numbers right now. So if as of right now, the odds, I don't know, 70% we get him back. Like I feel pretty good.
I wouldn't go that high personally.
Where would you go? In the end of the day, end of the year, I should say. What are the odds that we get Guerrero back right now?
40.
Big 4. So we have a less chance than like overall than signing him right now.
I think the best chance that you're going to get is extending him because there's nobody else in the room that's going to talk to him.
Right.
But I think that, you know, like the second that you start, he might like Toronto. He might really like Toronto.
Yeah.
But the second that, you know, you start seeing other options, oh, I'm walking into the New York Mets training facility, and
Mm-hmm.
oh, there's my buddy Juan Soto talking to me about why I should come here, and how they just made it to the World Series and they were really good. And I
Mm-hmm.
could push them over the edge. Oh, and here's Steve Cohen listening to all of my needs. I want a
Mm-hmm.
box. He gave me a box. I want all this money. He gave me all this money. Like the doubt will start to undoubtedly creep in. That's just something that's going to happen right now. I think is the best opportunity that you have because he does love you still. He really likes the city of Toronto, and you still have kind of that little ounce of risk of, oh, well, you don't want to go into next year in case you get hurt or play bad or anything like that. So I think hitting free agency will ultimately be a bad thing.
So if he doesn't extend in the next 6-7 hours that we have right now, what would it be? 40% is what you're saying?
Yeah, 40. I still think that we'd have the highest percent out of anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But now there's a lot of other variables in there, and
Yeah.
like there's other teams that are going to be vying for him, and maybe he walks into free agency, and the goal is to to end up going back to his former team. But like let's look around right here. Alex Bregman. I was under the impression that Alex Bregman really liked Houston and, was cool with staying there. And that's not where he ended up. Pete Alonso did. So it does happen where guys can come in and, kind of take like their pay cut and everything. But, when Juan Soto hit free agency, we were kind of all saying that it's the Yankees have a really, really good shot at getting it done. And then they didn't get it done, So I just think that there's a lot of variables in there. And ultimately, this is still the best opportunity that you're going to have.
And that's what I've been saying. Like, if we don't get him now, every single home run, every single strikeout, every single lost game or won game, that's gonna change everything. So everything is amplified by 10, right? Let's give a quick shout out before we bring in our guest, Nick Alberta, to McNugsy. Oh my God, I can't even say that. With a $5 dono saying, hey, Baltimore O's fan, let's go. I'm super disgruntled by O's not signing their young stars. If Jays sign Vlad, I'm defecting to be a Jays fan. Cool. Yeah, it works for me. I mean,
we'll take you, bro.
I don't know why you'd want to come here if you're an O's fan, but because we're further down the line in our rebuild, or I guess on our window, than you are. We're at the end of what you don't want to be. So, I mean, we'll see. But if they sign Vlad, I guess that could be your argument. But there ain't nobody coming up after Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So, cool with me though, McNuggies.
Yeah, and honestly, like you are onto something there though. That like you gotta extend Adley Rutschman, man. That's
and Gunner.
That's your identity. That's your team. I would be extremely disappointed with Baltimore if they didn't do that.
I mean, that's a problem. They got new ownership, but really, what have they done since they got new ownership? They traded for Corbin Burns,
which was a great move, but they haven't really spent a whole lot of money since then. Let's bring in our guest right here, Nick Alberta. Now, listen, this guy knows his puck, but he also knows a little bit about ball. Welcome in, Nick. How's it going, bro?
Boys, I'm fantastic. You guys have been doing a great job today. I guess we're doing a bit of a countdown to midnight. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we're waiting and waiting and waiting. But how are you guys doing today?
Good, man. Look, we love you online. We love you on Twitter. We follow you all the time. We've hung out before. We know you've got some really, really big opinions on the Toronto Blue Jays and Ross Atkins as well. So I'm excited to dive into all this. But I'm right off what you just said right there. I mean, yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I will push back a little bit here, Nick. I mean, if it was going to happen, it'd probably be up until today. Because if you're giving Vladdy and the Blue Jays this amount of time, they should use up all that time to find some sort of common ground. But if it doesn't happen today, I'm with you right there. It's kind of ridiculous that we can't get the deal done when we've seen, or the Blue Jays have got the exact number that Vladdy wants.
I would say it's mildly concerning, again, that we have a bit of a countdown imposed here, and the fact that it's now like we're getting to the nighttime and nothing's come out in terms of news. Like it's scary. But as I was relaying in text to you guys, like they can't afford to lose Vladdy Guerrero. Like, look at what's happened the last couple of years. I mean, it's become quite, blunt in my world. A lot of people don't want to play in Toronto, and there's a guy who wants to play in Toronto, who's a homegrown talent. He's a homegrown stud. The attachment to the city and the country. Like, how do you not make this deal? But again, these are we're talking about penny counters here, guys.
Yeah, I know. And look, like, people have been talking about, like, someone brought it up a little bit earlier in the chat. Well, if they don't extend Guerrero, they could spend that $400 million and spend it on like a bunch of other guys. But that's that's not how you win championships. You need guys like Guerrero on your team. Everybody needs a guy like Guerrero on your team. And going out and buying like a bunch of average to maybe a bit above average kind of guys with OPS pluses of 110, like that's not gonna push the needle in any regard. Like that's just gonna be filling the roster just to fill the roster without really having a chance. I think it's ridiculous too that we have a top 5 payroll. I just mentioned this top 5 payroll, top 6 payroll, and we don't have, and we're projected to win like 85 games. So keeping Guerrero here is essential.
It has to be. Who knows what's going on behind the scenes? Obviously, the dollar figure has changed substantially considering the year he's coming off of, but you just never know with this brain trust. And I think, again, if there's one thing I've learned again in this offseason, it's a tough time. It's a tough sell to sell this market in this city and players wanting to come here. And even thinking that ideology that they're going to bid up to get free agents hasn't seemed to work. So I understand the ideology of like, hey, like we lose that Vladdy money, he leaves or whatever, you trade him and maybe you fill that void elsewhere. It's easier said than done. Like you got to find those type of players who want to come. A lot of it's got to do with money and fit and stuff like that. And I just rather take my chances with a guy I've known since he was like 14 years old, guys. Yeah. Like that's the craziness of this all. Like we all first found out about Vladdy when he was 14 or 15 and the way he was brought up the pipeline. It would just really, really be a major kick in the pills if they can't get the job done here. Because I don't know how you guys feel. If he doesn't sign this extension, I think it becomes even more harder for this contract to get done in Toronto, quite frankly.
Yeah, we were just talking about that because somebody in our chat was asking, well, if he doesn't get extended now, okay, we're not going to extend him. That's fine. He'll hit free agency. And he was asking us, well, what do you think the odds are that if he hits free agency, he would come back to Toronto? And, we were saying this, well, there's a lot of variables because, you got to know, like, how was the team in 2025? How did he perform? How did other teams perform that might be in on him? In your opinion, if Guerrero was to hit free agency, could you see a reality where he comes back to Toronto? Or do you think that him hitting free agency is effectively like, all right, we're done, we're dusted, he's moving on?
It has to be the former. I just think because of like the lunatics in free agency, like you give every other team a shot at this guy. We just saw what the New York Mets did with Juan Soto. The Dodgers pick up every player. If he gets the free agency, guys, I'm already pessimistic to begin, but like I don't see it, regardless of how much they say they love the player. I don't feel that they're in love with the guy, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I think you get to that market, and it just takes one team who is disappointed by the way their season went, whether it's the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Mets, to just spend, ownership to say, you know what, spend whatever you need to get this guy in our uniform. And if there's one thing we've learned, I just don't think they're crazy about it. Like if you're Vladdy's camp and you see that the Jays are willing to go in the 600s or whatever it was of Juan Soto, above that for Shohei Ohtani, where the hell's my money? Like, I think there is a reason for that camp to be contentious about the way things have played out here. So sadly, I don't see it. I think this has to happen today, or it's like the whole year where this is going to be dwelling on the team and the player.
100% dwelling on everybody, right? Now, actually, a lot of people brought this up too. If we don't get this extension done, people have just said, well, then they might be open to trading him this upcoming trade deadline. I'm the kind of person that thinks, well, if they do that, that's essentially Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro signing off their resignation letters. They're like, you lose him. There is no guys coming up the pipeline. There is nobody available like him other than him and Kyle Tucker this upcoming free agency. And then beyond that, there is nobody that is that level of talent. Where are you on that? Do you think that even if they don't get it done, do you think they're going to try in this upcoming free agency, like hold on to him and then try to sign him back? Or do you think there's a realm of possibility where maybe they just ship him off and because they don't value him and they just want to get whatever values left?
My best answer, these guys will spin it, Atkins and Shapiro, whatever way that makes them look better than just the debauchery that we've seen the last couple of years. You guys by now know how I feel about this brain trust. I have zero faith in these guys running this organization right now. I'm sorry to be blunt about it. It's just the truth.
Be blunt.
There's been some great things that have come. Don't get me wrong. But they've really, really screwed a bunch of things up, man. Like this is Vladimir Guerrero we're talking about. Like we all know his father. I have an Expos jersey. I have an Angels jersey. Like this guy is everything to baseball in this country. And the player went out there last year. He proved his worth. And hell, nobody's even talking about Bo Bichette. Like, they're just letting it. Here's your hand. Let's walk you to free agency. That guy's not re-signing here. So to answer your question, I think there's always that possibility. I think a lot of it depends on how they do this year. But to your point earlier on, they made some additions that I think will put Toronto in a conversation like every year for the wild card positioning. But if they're out of it, I do see a pathway, because there's no way. And again, I'm always careful to say no way, because again, I just disclosed how I feel about this brain trust. They're the perfect type of people that would try to justify not trading Vladdy at the deadline, regardless of being in or out. So you just never know with these guys.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I take it, and I actually know the answer, but I'm just probing you to say it. In your opinion, you think it's time to go for Ross and Shapiro? Is that right?
Well, it's like I want to see like progression. Like, can you guys sit here with a straight face and tell me that there's clarity with this within this franchise right now that wasn't there 2 years ago? Like, we've been asking this Vladdy and Bo question for like 7 years now. Like, when's the extension coming? And granted, you never know what's going to transpire, but they obviously have blown a lot of money the last year, considering 2 years ago the way Vladdy played. But I guess you can make the conversation the other way with the year Bo just had, right? But he's not signing. There's no way Bo Bichette's going to sign a contract right now. It makes no sense. But yes, I think the writing has been on the wall for the last couple of years. I still think this team failed to address the needs of the fact that they can't hit a baseball. I mean, offense does win games, contrary to popular belief. I know they have the best D in baseball. The pitching staff I'm excited about. All that's great. But when push comes to shove, like the thing lingering in my mind as well, maybe it is with them guys, and maybe you would agree or disagree, come the playoffs, it really has that leafy feel to this team. I talk about it on a daily basis with Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, Willie Nylander. Let's not forget that, folks. Okay, so I know I came on here, I piled up on the Blue Jays, but every time the Jays got to a pressure cooker situation in the playoffs, where was Vladdy? Where was Bo? Right. So I think you glass half empty, half full. The conversation's very polarizing. I just think, and I told you guys off the air, bringing it on air, they can't afford to lose Vladdy Guerrero, more so because nobody really wants to come here right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's the attraction, right? He's attraction
exactly.
As well. And you know, I want to jump off because you mentioned Bo Bichette a little bit. You know, have you read the recent interview kind of things of him being like, oh, well, yeah, I want to play with Vladdy for the rest of my career. Do you think that changes anything if they do get a Vladdy extension done? Do you think that changes anything with Bo Bichette and the Blue Jays, or is that just wishful thinking?
I think it's wishful thinking. You got to remember, I've been in this business a long time. It's all about PR, man, making yourself look pretty. I was laughing. Bo Bichette comes into camp. How pretty does he look, eh? Fit for the gorgeous New York Yankees, the clean shave, the haircut. It's all about positioning. I learned a long time ago, just I always have to like read in between the lines when I see stuff like that. The PR game, what's the agent telling the player to do? How should you react to this? Like, these guys are coached from such a young age. I guess never say never. I think with both these guys, I mean, let's be honest, money is a big factor in any decision a professional athlete is making. So you got to hit that point. And the fact of like, it's so interesting to me, you know, regardless of the player, you mentioned Kyle Tucker as well. The game has changed so much in the last couple of years with the Soto contract and Shohei Ohtani contract that I think it's so hard to compare and contrast if you're the agent. So Soto gets that money. What is Vlad worth? And I think it's up to the two sides now to decide. Ditto for Bo Bichette. And also the positioning. Like, I'm curious. They really haven't talked about it yet, but like Bichette, I think is better served obviously staying at shortstop than going to another position. You can make the same conversation about Vladdy Guerrero. Like, I think Vladdy would have been the most excited to get Pete Alonso in the mix here because maybe he moves to third. Like, three baggers make a lot more money. So I like to think outside the box when it comes to like free agent years and contracts.
Yeah, I agree with all that, man. And honestly, that's what you were saying right at the end there about the whole position and everything. It's been one of my arguments as to why I think maybe there is a bit of an impasse in this deal, because we just saw Pete Alonso, very, very solid player, granted a lot older than Guerrero at this point, but you know, kind of the same player type where I'm really good with the bat. I'm not a great defender. I don't run the bases especially well. You know, he is, again, older than Vlad, but he didn't get nearly as much money as everybody was intending. And I think a lot of that has to do with the poor defense and the position that he plays. And we know that Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro, that is something that's valuable to them. Defense, fielding, all that shit, they eat that up. And I do wonder if like that mentality is almost something that's holding them back from giving Guerrero the big bucks and from totally falling in love with him. Like, as you were bringing up earlier, falling in love with the player, because he isn't necessarily that guy. He doesn't have the Matt Chapman glove on him. He just doesn't. And to them, I wonder if they're looking at all those things and thinking, are we really going to give $450 million to, basically a glorified bat? Again, I don't feel that way. I don't feel that way. But that's what I think they might feel like. So, again, thoughts on that? Do you think I'm onto something there or just talking nonsense?
No, definitely. I think it gets back to the full point of this conversation. It's time for like a clean sweep in the head office. Like, I don't think they have the proper mentality to want to win actual meaningful baseball games. Like, I think they're very analytics heavy. I think obviously the pitching's been great. Like every year, Pete Walker's done a masterful job. As you guys know, we interviewed Max Scherzer on Leafs Morning Take, and I'm pumped to see him just more so like what Max Scherzer can do to rub off on the rest of the organization. Like I saw the videos the other day already in camp. There's like 6 guys around him because this guy's like a fountain of youth, man. Like he has been around for so long. Like in an interview, I referenced For Love of the Game and Billy Chappell, and I said, Max, like, where are you in your career? 7th inning, 9th inning? He's like, man, I'll just continue to go out there and do my thing. Like he just strikes me as a baseball lifer. And you can never have enough, type players like that. But to answer your question, I do think that is part of the conversation. There's just something the last couple of years that leads me to believe that they're not entirely in love with the player. Because if you are, it's more like with players of that ilk, I don't know if you guys would agree, it's more like, here's a blank check. What do you want? And the fact that they haven't given that blank check to Vladdy concerns me.
Like I said off the top, Vladdy said exactly how much he wants. He's told them how much he wants. And then from a front office standpoint, okay, when a player's telling me that, unless it's outside my budget, then like I should be smashing it immediately. There shouldn't be any negotiation. And you're right, it is coming down to the wire. And it is kind of ridiculous if you look at it in that way, that they're trying to they know the exact number and they are trying to bring him down. However, let's see what happens tonight. Now, you mentioned Max Scherzer, and I actually wanted to bring this up while you were here. You had him up on your podcast. So, guys, Nick, where can everybody check that out? Just real quick. Where can everyone check out your Max Scherzer interview?
At the Leafs Nation 401. Again, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. At the Leafs Nation 401. Leafs Morning Take in podcast form as well. We spent about 16, 17 minutes with Max Scherzer. It came together really, really quickly. I know somebody in DC who tipped me off that he watches hockey. He's a big sports fan. So we drawed, comparisons, why Toronto, how, pumped he is to maybe go to a Maple Leafs game. We talked about some of the similarities. My favorite question I asked about, superstitions. And I said, how superstitious are you? Baseball players are a different level to hockey players, in my opinion. And he said, I'm so superstitious that I can't even talk about being superstitious. Like, he was just a really fun interview. And I'm sure you guys have done the same thing. When you talk to somebody who's been around a sport, the way Max Scherzer's been around baseball, just when he speaks, you listen. And I just sat there and chilled and listened. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. So at the Leafs Nation 401, I would just add to, I think the Jays just need a win here. I hope these guys aren't tone deaf, but they strike me as tone deaf individuals. Social media has been ablaze for the last couple of off seasons. You need this victory. So I implore them, please sign Vladimir Guerrero.
What, you talk to the guy, so I mean, you know probably more than a lot of people. What were your thoughts on the whole Max Scherzer coming here? Do you think he's gonna impart some of that wisdom on the pitching staff? Is he gonna move the needle at all for us? And then over as well, why did he choose Toronto? If you don't mind me asking, I haven't listened to the full interview yet.
Yeah, honestly, it was very hockey heavy, but I think, he really hammered home the same points he said with the media last week, which I thought was interesting because like you guys, you're bringing in Max Scherzer, tells me you're bringing in somebody else. And, they didn't, unless you like Amir Garrett quite a bit. So I don't know. I think he's like, knowing what, the little I do about Max Scherzer, I think he sees the star power on this team. He sees Vladdy. We all know Bo Bichette's going to rip this year, guys. Guaranteed. Contract year. Vladdy too. So I think as a professional athlete, we just talked about thinking outside the box. you think about the optics. Let's say Vladdy and Bo both at least play to their potential. I think you're sitting pretty. Not to mention Santander in the mix. I think if you're Max, you look at some of the other hurlers on that staff. There's potential for this team, to do the unexpected. Talking to a couple people in the industry the last couple of weeks, obviously I'm down on this Jays team, but a lot of them make a great point that every year is so unpredictable in Major League Baseball. Like there's 162 games, injuries can happen, stuff like that. So never say never. Who's to say the Jays don't come out red hot, play really good defense as we expect, get the pitching and get better hitting. I mean, it puts them in a position to contend not only in this division, but also for the rest of baseball. So I think he just looked at that. Who knows what was happening behind the scenes, who else was interested, and he thought, hey, this is a really good fit. He doesn't have to be the guy either. I expect him to be a 4 or 5 guy with potential, but I think they'll be very careful with his deployment because of his age, right? I think in my world, at least, and I know he's 40, guys. I know this is wishful thinking, but maybe you get late in the season and there's like an important start and Max Scherzer gets the ball. Like the guy's such a gamer. Where would you be shocked if you get 4 innings out of the guy and he's stellar? Probably not.
Yeah, look, if he's healthy and we're in a playoff spot and he's doing good, I mean, look, if it's all even, like if you're looking at ERAs and numbers and performance and everyone's kind of pitching the same, in a 3-game series, if it's wild card, how do I not give the ball to Max Scherzer or piggyback him off somebody else? He's got to pitch in meaningful games. So with that being said, actually, shout out to Betway. Over-under is 78.5. Where are you kind of at here, Nick?
For wins?
For wins.
I'm trying my best to be optimistic. There's obviously a lot of noise around this team, but I think around 83, 84 wins. Like I think a lot of people are going to be down on the Jays, but the one thing I would expect is like strong pitching and defense. And I think if that hitting, like my projection is that Vladdy and Bo are both going to have strong years. So those guys alone, I think add some wins, So I would say I'm going to take the over on that.
Okay. You're almost exactly where we are at right now, man. Like 83, 84 wins. That feels like kind of the safe number. Now, the sad thing is that's not wild card.
No,
that's not playoff.
Some hopium has to happen. Some breakouts need to happen. And then we're there.
Yeah.
Right?
Like ultimately it's like to make wild card, you need 87 minimum and probably more than that. So 83, 84, not going to cut it. But I do think that is kind of where they're sitting right now. And I agree with you, man. Like Bo Bichette's going to ball out. And, especially like Guerrero, especially if he is in a contract year, like if they don't get the extension, I mean, holy shit. Like, that guy could hit 50 bombs again, right?
That almost makes me fearful because, I mean, I don't know how much you pay attention to Vladdy when he's under a lot of pressure. I mean, this year was different. He actually performed very well in high leverage situations, but prior years, it felt like he was chasing a lot. He was kind of forcing the issue to get back to 2021. We'll see what version of Vladdy we get this year, but like that also makes me fearful if he is in a contract year. How is he going to perform?
You just got to hope though that like as he's getting older, he's going to grow out. You know what I mean? It's like you got to hope that's kind of on the way. But a point being, we're right there with you on the win total, and ultimately, I also agree with you. I was kind of on the side that you were saying, which was should they not extend him now with psychopaths like Steve Cohen and the Dodgers and Yankees or whatever? I don't know, man. It gets the chances of holding on to him without an extension to me are a lot slimmer.
Yeah, and just the last thing I would add, I mean, I think it has been in the DNA of this brain trust to penny count on every damn player. So why would you stop now? And that's what concerns the hell out of me. We got like 6 hours until midnight Eastern. Like who's to say they're just not chilling, having dinner right now, not even talking, not even engaging. Like I mean, it's kind of saddening from a fan perspective that this is your marquee player that, you've built your franchise around and you're waiting to the final seconds to save a couple bucks when you're willing to go out there and spend like ridiculous amounts of money on one player. So I'll leave it at that.
All right. Well, before we let you go, if you had to bet your life on it, Vladdy's staying a Blue Jay next year, 2026.
These guys are pretty dumb. They're idiots, but I think that they do. They get the job done. I think he signs his contract, boys.
That's where I'm at too, Nick. All right, Nick, thank you so much for hopping on for this little bit. Guys, go check out Leafs Morning Take. You'll see Nick Alberga on there. Nick, thank you again for coming on, man.
My pleasure, guys. Great job. Thank you for the energy today. Take care.
Cheers, dude. Cheers. Okay, so I mean, ultimately, I liked a lot of what he had to say there, and I'm kind of I'm in the same boat. After listening to him argue about Guerrero hitting free agency and how he thinks that, ultimately, if he hits free agency, it's going to be a lot tougher.
Yeah.
Are you still 70% if he hits free agency as a Blue Jay?
Like I'm still 70 because I think they'll find a way, because I always just keep coming back to well, maybe you could argue the values and whatnot. Like maybe they don't value him as much, but we were willing to dish out money for Soto. You're willing to dish out money for Ohtani. When it finally comes down to the deadline, you're gonna start to show up and push and get the deal done.
That's I'm gonna push back on that, because we're at the deadline right now
of what we can control, right? And again, we don't know what the negotiations are behind the scenes. What if they want to leave it up to the market? I brought that up before, as a possibility of how they go about these negotiations. I would think that's stupid, because you're going to risk losing him and risk the value going up insane amount. But what if you're okay with that? I don't know. What if you want the season to determine how much he's worth? I don't know.
It just ultimately, guys, it feels to me like this is your opportunity to buck up or shut up. Because you're right. When push comes to shove, do they give him the money?
Do they give him the money?
This is one of those times. I would argue that this is it. Because let's face it, if he hits free agency, odds are he'll be more money than you're offering right now. Probably.
Unless he's bad.
Unless he's
at
bad.
That point, I have no clue.
And then it's God only knows what the hell happens at that point.
And that's actually probably the worst situation I want. I'd rather be comfortable knowing if he had a bad year, he's still here for a long time. Because I know Vlad, he's going to be locked in. Whereas if he is bad, there's going to be all these question marks of how much is he really worth? I don't really want to care. And let's say this, if he is bad and he has a bad year, I don't want anyone saying, if we lock him down right now and he does have a bad year, I'm talking bad for Vlad standards, slightly above average, then I don't want anybody telling me it's a bad deal, because we were accepting that was going to happen.
Well, people are going to tell you that anyways, because that's just the way of the world.
That's the way it goes.
Listen, it's Bo Shed actually put it perfectly the other day. He said this league is a "what have you done for me lately" type of league. That's what he said. And he's totally right. What has Bo Bichette done for us lately? The reason we're not all talking about Bo Bichette getting extended is because what he's done for us lately isn't a whole lot.
And he knows that.
And he knows that. He's well aware of that, right? If Guerrero, for instance, if Vladimir Guerrero Jr. had a bad year last year, we would not be talking nearly as much about an extension.
The fact he had that second half is phenomenal.
It changes everything for him.
Do you remember how he was doing worse than what he was doing in 2023?
We're extremely mid.
Yeah, we were this guy's a bust. We were literally thinking not bust, but is Guerrero
just a mid-average player?
Is this what he is now? And then he turned it on. And we're
turned it on.
Here's $450 million.
Hopefully. Yeah. So again, things change so quickly. I do believe that this is your moment, Rogers, Mark, Ross, Blue Jays. This is your time to go. Here's all the money, because it's not a whole lot, I think, is going to change when free agency comes. It's just you're going to be battling, the psychopaths of the world like Steve Cohen and others. And that's not something I want to do. Now, we're going to get Jim Riley, Ball Cap Sports on here very, very soon, everybody. But in the meantime, we'll give a couple other quick updates from Blue Jays land. Alek Manoah. He is starting to ramp up a little bit, very minorly, everybody. He's still going to be a while. He's not going to start with a team, nothing like that. But hopefully at some point in the season, he will pitch for us. He's working on stuff right now. Hazelmay posted a video out about him. He's throwing the ball, feeling okay. Tentatively set to throw a bullpen session in a couple weeks' time. So
that's awesome.
Promising.
That's awesome. Look, he's going to throw a bullpen session for the first time since his procedure. That is awesome to hear. And I brought this up last Thursdays when the spring training kicked off. It was great to see Manoah still there with the boys around the bullpen, watching Jeff Hoffman pitch and watching Max Scherzer. That's a great sign for me. It goes beyond just will he play well? It's he wants to be here, and that's a guy I'm truly rooting for. If you want to be here, I'm rooting for you. Especially with someone like Manoah, we've seen he can do it.
Right.
It's not like he just can't do it anymore. Maybe he can. Maybe the injury really fucked him up. But he has the ability in him to be that good, and he really cares about this team, and he wants to prove he can do it. So go ahead. do it. And I root for guys like that. I
Yeah,
want him to
100%, dude. I am definitely rooting for Manoah here. I was a little off on him after that whole stint with the, not showing up to Buffalo, whatever. Listen, time has passed. Time has passed. All right. Like you feel like you're locked in at this point. I'm ready to hop right back on the Manoah train and wish for the best with him. Quick shout out here to the almost 800 people that are watching right now. If you guys haven't already, actually just went to 800. If you haven't already done so, please hit the like on the stream. Can we get up to 200 likes and subscribe to the channel, guys? If you haven't already done so, we're trying to get to 30,000 subscribers. It would mean a lot. Also, major shout out here to Jen Smith, who's in the chat right now.
Yo, shout out Jen.
She's on Twitter, always tweeting Blue Jay stuff. Go check her out.
Jen,
talking baseball. How are you feeling? Temperature check. Where are you at right now? Both of us are kind of 50-50, maybe a little bit less than 50% that he is going to get extended today. Let us know where you are at right now. We'd love to give you a quick shout out.
Pop saying, guys, I rushed my homework to be here. Don't need to rush anything. We're going to be here all night long, my man.
Dude, I wish that the fucking Toronto Blue Jays would rush their homework.
Oh, me too.
They are procrastinating to the final moment.
Listen, I'm playing like devil's advocate and stuff where I'm like, I understand why they're taking all this time to be here. I was saying that to Nick Alberga, and he was saying, I think it's ridiculous that they haven't signed it yet. And I hear where he's coming from, because the fan in me is like, hurry the up.
Right.
Actually, what are we waiting for? The number, do it. But I get it why they want to do it. I mean, that's another way I guess you can look at it. The reason why they're using all this time is because they don't want to give them that money.
Well, exactly, right?
They don't want to give them that
ultimately, they are trying to work to save a buck. That's what it is. And again, we don't want to have a bad deal. Okay. Yeah. There is a possibility, whenever you sign an extension like this, there's a possibility that it just turns out to be a really, really bad deal.
Sure.
Look at Anthony Rendon right now. Now, he wasn't extended, but the guy is terrible. Juan Soto just got paid $765 million. Actually, there's so many opportunities for that to be a bad deal, because really the only way that that's a good deal is if he has a 950 OPS as a Met in his career and wins, 2 World Series. That is what quantifies, okay, we got our money's worth. So when you are shelling out $400, $450, $500 million, they got to factor that in. So it's just fucking tough, dude.
I just had this realization right now. I just think it's I think it's so ridiculous how you're trying to value Vladimir Guerrero Jr. or what they're trying to do, put a number on what he's worth in terms of production on his field. He's a different player. He's up in the tiers of Juan Soto's and the Mike Trouts and the Judges and all these people that literally impact the game and impact your team like no one other. And there's no way you can justify whether his numbers that he did is good, because there's going to be an overpay regardless. You have to overpay for these kind of players
until the CBA changes. They're just getting overpaid. And ultimately, I know that whatever they give Guerrero, let's be completely honest here. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is a, mid to below average defender, playing first base, kind of one of the easier positions to play. And, he's a bat. So whatever they give him, it's going to be an overpay eventually.
I want to bring this up because I just thought of the first person I thought of. Kevin Gausman, other than last year because he was hurt, you signed him for a 3 WAR every single year, and you're paying him $22 million per year. Okay. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., he's going to get paid $40 million per year?
Almost double.
So you're asking Vladimir Guerrero Jr., unless he puts up a 6 WAR every single season, 6.5, then you can't really justify it. He has to be that level of elite, but he's going to have his down years.
Exactly. He's going to have his down years, man. I mean, that's the thing, right? Juan Soto, to make his contract worth it, he's got to be a 6.5 WAR player year in and year out.
Well, yeah, if you want to take that example, random person, I just thought off the top of my head. But if you want to take that example, Juan Soto needs to be a 9 WAR player every single year. That's not going to happen for a guy who's going to be a DH.
He will a couple years. There'll probably be a couple of years where he's a 9 WAR guy, and you're going to be real happy.
Fucking, what is it, 15 years?
It's a long time. No, it's a long time. Jen out here saying that she's always thought that he would want to see what the other 29 teams have to say. In which case the Instagram countdown is diabolical. I certainly hear you on that, Jen. Ultimately, and there is that whole aspect too. Now, I personally disagree with you in a little bit, because as much as you want to test free agency, I just personally think if the Jays are offering you $400 million, how much more are you going to get on the open market? I don't think Vladdy's a 700 guy. I don't think he's a 600 guy. I would be kind of surprised if he ends up becoming a $500 million guy. So if you are getting $400 million from the Toronto Blue Jays, like, I just think that the reward of you going out and having a great year is less than the risk of you, getting injured and, totally having a bad year or something like that. The risk is not worth the reward, in my opinion. Now, of course, we still don't know exactly what the Toronto Blue Jays are offering. For all we know, they're still stuck at 350 and, they're not budging from it.
Oh God. If that was the actual case, I'd be like, what the fuck?
Well, in which case, okay, then yeah, he is going to get free agency.
This is what I'd say. Then trade him. Like, if you genuinely are if you're stuck at 350, then fucking trade the guy. What are we waiting for? Like, if you because that means you're not getting him back if you're stuck at a certain number. Like,
yeah.
And again, if they also think, well, this is our limit and we're gonna stay at that limit and even keep at that limit until free agency, no matter what he does, well, then just trade him again, because it will go up if he has a decent year. Like, so
that's the thing. And ultimately, I really hope that the Toronto Blue Jays have done their homework in all of this. And they should know exactly how they view Vladdy at this point.
Absolutely.
They really, really should. And if there's still questions about that, then holy shit, we are so good. We got over 800 people in here, so shout out and thank you. We still haven't got to 200 likes. What on earth are we doing here, guys? Kind of disappointed, but no longer disappointed because we got our buddy coming in here, Jim Ballcap Sports. This guy covers everything MLB, but secretly he's a Toronto Blue Jays fan, and we love to bring him on here and pick his brain about all of this. So welcome in, Jim. It's Vladdy extension deadline day. We got 6 hours to go. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I am eagerly awaiting the word. I'm hoping it's good news here soon. But I don't know. I'm curious how you guys are feeling. I have raised my level of Vladdy extension up to 50%, and I was all the way down to like 10%, 5 or 10%. A couple of months ago. I'm up to 50% today, and I don't know if I can go any higher than that. But how are you guys feeling?
Before I tell you how I'm doing, why 50? What's the reasoning? What's the reasoning behind the raising of the percentage?
The sound bites, the word we've gotten from Teoscar Hernandez, from Jose Barrios, saying that he wants to be here. Just since the Soto deal, there's been talk about how he wants to stay in Toronto, that he's given the Blue Jays the number. And if they know the number, I mean, I'm not surprised that we're here today still waiting, because when you know the number, when you know when it expires, you can take a leisurely stroll up to that deadline and know you have nothing to worry about. But between then and the deadline, you try to rework some things to get the dollars down or to do something. So I'm feeling optimistic. It really is a lot of what we've heard from players that really boosted it more so than anything else.
Yeah, like that's kind of where I'm at, Jim, to tell you kind of also thank you, Jim, for coming in. We really, really do appreciate you, man. That's kind of where I'm at. They're taking the time, and people might be saying, well, why haven't they done already? Just do it already. Well, if I'm given, if I'm Ross Atkins or the Blue Jays management, if I'm given until February 18th to use all that ample time to negotiate the deal best suited for my team, you, whatever it might be, I'm going to use that time, and if you stick with that deadline and you stick by your word, I probably know, and maybe this is wishful thinking, but I probably know in the back of my mind what I'm okay with landing on come February 18th. And I'm going to try and work my way there. And I probably have that in mind. And if I get somewhere close, I will maybe jump on that. If not, that's why I'm kind of 50-50. I don't know how close they've gotten to that ideal number or that they're willing to do. But that's where I'm about 50-50 that it happens tonight, or maybe tomorrow morning we wake up and find out.
I think it's actually I think it's real easy. I am also kind of, flip of a coin right here. And on one side of the coin, the argument for me is, well, this just makes sense. He's a great player. He is your franchise guy. He wants to be here. Like you said, players have come out talking about him. All those things, check, check, check. All the boxes, feeling very good. On the other side of the coin, we have two idiots. Their names are Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro. And sometimes, listen, Jim, sometimes the logical thing, actually, this happens a lot of time in the world. This happens every day. A lot every day. Sometimes the logical thing doesn't happen. It doesn't, right? And I could honestly see this management kind of just butcher this whole thing, dude. So that is where I am at with this. I would argue, though, that losing Guerrero, that's not going to look very, very good on the Ross Atkins, Mark Shapiro resume. Do you think that if Guerrero doesn't get extended, if he hits free agency, all of those things, do you think that's kind of them like kissing their Toronto careers goodbye?
Well, don't you feel like, let's back up for a second. Don't you feel like ownership has an equal amount of dirt on their hands with this whole thing? That, yeah, you've got those two, but at the end of the day, this is a player, a face of the franchise player that the Toronto Blue Jays have never had before. And I went through this exercise earlier today, and I started thinking about, well, what about Roy Halladay? Nah, not really. What about Vernon Wells? Because at the time, Vernon was the face of the franchise and an exciting player when he signed his extension. It went really south after, but leading up to that, Vernon was the face of the team. So I started to think about it, and I could not find a player at this point in his career, at this age, with this talent, with this history, that equals what Vladdy equals. So this is got the ownership has to be on the hook with this too. If you don't get this done, yes, Ross and Mark, they're the face guys because that's the president and that's the general manager. But the owner needs to step up, and if those two are screwing it up, I need Ed Rogers to say, I don't care. What does he want? Give it to him. And if if Ed Rogers doesn't do that, then I'm going to assign 30% to Ross, 30% to Mark, and 30% to Ed as the trio that let the faciest face of the franchise of all time walk. And I can't. So I again, it'll be on their shoulders, but I got to put it on the owner too.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, people have been kind of speculating that, like, hopefully, they're actually hoping that Ed Rogers steps in and slams down that contract, boots the two out of the room, and goes, "We're signing Vlad no matter what." And I mean, a lot of people feel that way. That okay, yeah, well, if we don't extend Vladdy, what are we doing? Because if you look at what's coming up, on free agency, there isn't anybody like Vladdy other than Kyle Tucker. We can let's say assume we're not going to get Kyle Tucker this year. In the future free agencies, what Gunnar Henderson in 4 years? You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the next guy that we know of right now that would be available. And then at that point, are we even get him? And then you look at our farm system, and there's nobody coming up to even close to Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s caliber. So for me, I'm with you. It makes a lot of logical sense. Sign this guy because it checks all the boxes. He wants to play. He's Canadian. He brings in the fans. But are they going to do it, and are they going to match the number? If it doesn't match their valuations of him, you think they have that ability? Because I think that's where everyone comes in and goes, well, we haven't seen them do that. We haven't seen them overpay like that before.
Well, they tried to. They tried to in free agency. Just the outside guys didn't take the deal. Ohtani didn't take the deal. Soto didn't take the deal. They didn't take the deal. I also get back to, this is not just about a player. It's also about a business decision, because they have spent the timing. So if this was like 10 years ago, or if this was 10 years down in the future, you could understand them saying, it just doesn't work for us from a business standpoint. We got to let Vladdy walk. It's too much money. But this team, how much money have they spent on this ballpark over the last couple of seasons? Renovations.
That's where I come back to.
Yeah, they have spent hundreds of millions, $1 billion or damn near close to it, improving, investing in the viability of this team. And if you let the guy who everything evolves around leave, you're making a poor business decision, because all of a sudden some of those season tickets are not going to re-up. People are not going to come out on the weekend. If the perception is that window that we've been hearing about for so long is over, then why am I re-upping? Why am I going to come back? Look, Bo can leave. It would be okay. Chris Bassett can leave. It'll be okay. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., if they lose all three of them this offseason or they don't get the Vladdy thing done, I think it just sets a bad it sets a bad mark out there from a future of the team, and it will impact the bottom line, and people will you'll lose attendance. You'll see the gate number decline if Vladdy leaves, even if they have Santander signed for 5 years. That won't matter. And Andres Jimenez for the rest of his that Jimenez and Santander will not bill the same way Vladdy and Bo will.
100%.
I mean, at the end of the day, Jim, like vibes are a real thing, you know, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr., it's just like the vibe around if he's here is we're still competing. We're still winning. Now, a couple teams out there where the vibes are looking real good. I think Boston, the vibes are pretty high right now, even though Devers is being a little bit of a diva, but, you know, that's for another time. Large in part, vibes are high in Boston. Vibes are high over there in New York. Both New Yorks, actually, I would say. You know, like they're feeling pretty good about where they're at right now. Obviously, LA Dodgers vibes are incredible, immaculate over there. The reason I'm bringing up all of these teams right now is if Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is not extended in the next 6 hours, he is going to hit free agency, and I think that we can expect the usual suspects being those teams and probably a handful of other squads, you know, that you can, you know, pinpoint. They're all going to be in the mix. Now, we just had another guest on. His name is Nick Alberga. He was arguing as to why, if he does hit free agency, he thinks that probably Vladdy will go elsewhere. How do you feel about that? Do you think that if Guerrero does hit free agency and isn't extended, you know, odds are he's going to come back to the Blue Jays, or is, you know, psychopath Steve Cohen going to give him a blank check and bring him to the Queens?
Well, that's the problem. It's Steve Cohen. If the Mets want him, they will get him. You know, I can see a handful. I can see Boston being in play, but Boston will have a ceiling. I can see Texas being in play, but they will have a ceiling.
Think about that, but you're right. Yeah.
I could see Atlanta, but they will. Every team will have a ceiling except for the Mets, and the Blue Jays will probably be willing to go to an uncomfortable level if it reaches the open market. They will try really hard to keep him, but I don't think you can beat Steve. And I think this past offseason was the perfect example of that. You're not going to beat Steve Cohen if he wants a guy. If he says, this is the guy I want, I don't care. You know, if Vladdy does not get his deal done and we find out that the Blue Jays were willing to go to 450, that probably means that's where it starts next year is 450. And if the Blue Jays were willing to go to 450 now, will they be willing to go to 550 next offseason, which is what it might be what it might take to beat Steve Cohen. And I looked at the Mets payroll. So they've got, you know, obviously a decent chunk over the next couple of years. But in 2027, after the 2027 season, so that's after 3 seasons, they only have 3 contracts on the books. And that is Soto, Lindor, and Nimmo. That's it. So they could very easily start paying a hefty Vladdy tab in 2026 and not really think twice about it. So that's the problem. There are other teams that make sense, but if Steve Cohen's in there because Juan Soto's like, I want to play with Vladdy for the rest of my career, then it's going to happen.
Why do you think, other than negotiations falling short, but why do you think they only got Pete Alonso for 3 years with a bunch of opt-outs? You know what I mean?
That's true too, right? Like, should Pete Alonso have a nice year and should he decide to opt out? I mean, like, there it is. There is the available spot ready and waiting. And, you know, again, like that is what I keep coming back to is just like, I don't want to see Toronto go toe-to-toe with Steve Cohen because I know that they're going to lose. I know they're going to lose. And I wouldn't be shocked if, like a team like Texas kind of goes, we've seen them go crazy before, right? And I do like what Boston's building. And maybe, you know, I've heard that the Devers and Guerrero, well, they're kind of buddies. They're close, right? Like, does that sway him in any way? It just feels like now is the time to get uncomfortable with your number, because you know, in 8 months from now, when he is a free agent and all that, like it's going to be much more uncomfortable, I think, than you're feeling right now if you're Toronto.
Yeah.
No, this is the time. Um, he needs to be locked in. I've gone through the numbers. I feel like, and then I wonder what you guys think about this,
Mhm.
that for the player on the field and what he can produce with the bat, you give him 12 for 350, 325, 350, just for what he does from a production standpoint. He's a
Right.
$300
Okay.
million dollar
Yep.
player. On top of that, that face of the franchise element that I talked about, he is the first one to enter this level of face of the franchise magnitude. There's a tax that needs to be applied on top of that 350.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there's another tax that needs to be applied to prevent Steve Cohen from
Yep.
getting in the mix and to prevent him from putting on a Boston Red Sox uniform. So when you start applying, so when you, if the starting point is 350 just for what he does on the field, when you apply all those other taxes, I think you easily get to 450, and you're somewhere between 450 and 5.
Yeah.
Right.
When you consider all of that, when you consider that it's 12 or 13 years, his age, his marketability, not just his marketability to bring fans out, his marketability to bring other players in. Why
Mhm.
why are the Dodgers getting so many players and also getting players to defer money at the rate that they're deferring? It's because they want to go play for that team,
Yeah.
Mhm.
for that franchise, and be a part of that culture with Otani and Mookie Betts and all of those players. You want to start creating that. If anything, what the Dodgers have said is they've set the standard for
Yeah.
what you need to measure yourself by. Are we creating an environment where players are willing to push the money off because they want to come play with the guys that we have, for the coach that we have, for the front office that we have? And the Toronto Blue Jays would take a magnificent step forward in
Mhm.
that direction by getting a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. extension done.
I also think too, Jim, and I just had this thought right now, like it's marketability now, and
Hmm.
it's also like marketability years from now, because
Hmm.
like Vladimir Guerrero Jr., as we've been saying, like there hasn't really ever been anybody like that for Toronto. Like there just
Mhm.
hasn't. If he signs a 12-year extension, let's say, and goes on to do like the great things that we think he is capable of, continues what he's doing in his career, ends up going to the Hall of Fame. I mean, that's a jersey retired. That's
Yep.
a level of excellence. That's when you look up, and when you think about the Toronto Blue Jays, even, 20, 30 years after he's gone,
Hmm.
that's who you're thinking of. That's who you're talking about, right?
Yep.
This
Mhm.
is, it's not only just right now. It's like you're building your whole team's resume for like ever,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
and honestly, I like what you said a little bit earlier. I was kind of hanging on to that when you said like, oh, the tax is going up to 450, and like that's the number that Vladdy wants. I think if the Blue Jays know that, and this is what they need to factor into with this whole negotiation right now, the 450 is where it starts in free agency. So you're getting a
Yep.
great deal right now,
Yep.
assuming he goes on and has another good year or equal to what he's done in his career averages. He's going to get 450 at minimum. If you
Hmm.
can get him for 450 now, like you have to factor that in. If you
That's
plan on extending him, if that's your goal. If you don't, then just effing trade the guy. Because then
Yeah.
what are you doing wasting your time? Go get him at the discount right now. Discount right now. It's a lot of money, but still, like,
Hmm.
and that's where I kind of at, where it makes sense for me if they just used logic.
Yeah.
Then they
yeah.
could. Then the deal's got to be done tonight. Now, Jim, do you think the deal's going to happen tonight? Or is it something we're going to have to wait for? Or do you think there's a reality where a deal happens after this deadline?
I gotta think it happens tonight. So the initial deadline when it was reported was that it was by the first full team workout,
Mm-hmm.
and by my what I have read from Toronto's website and their spring training information and all that, it, it's got to be that workout would occur at some point tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m. So at some point, the facility opens to the public at 10 a.m. And
Mm.
anybody that's been to spring training before, if you're there at 10 a.m., by the time their players are already out on the field, they're already taking swings, working on stuff. That you've got the guys throwing, everything's already happening. So that tells me that it is it is going to be a morning workout. So it has to happen before then. I don't believe, with all the time we've had to lead up, that this would be something that would happen at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. I got to think the prime window for this to be announced has got to be sometime between now and midnight. Not that midnight's the deadline, because it's not, but at some point tonight, because you're not going to be trying to hammer out details. And, the Blue Jays can announce tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. They can say there's going to be a press conference at 11 and everybody be there, kind of thing.
Right.
But, the John Heymans, the Morosis, the Passons, like, I would, if once that's teed up and ready to go, they should know that there's an agreement in place, and the press conference is to announce that. I don't think the Blue Jays are going to be able to keep that much under wraps. And I got to think that'll be tonight. I don't think we're going to go. I think if it's done, it's already done. Honestly, I think if it's done, it's already done. And now we're just putting, the ink is drying. I don't know about you guys, but I think it's a good sign that we didn't see Vladdy at camp today. Because if you go around and you look at all the other camps, Trout showed up, Judge showed up, Devers showed up. They all showed up and they all had a microphone in their face. And that would have been a terribly uncomfortable situation for Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Right.
So there has to have been communication between him and the team and everyone else. Like, let's not do anything today, because you're going to get a ton of questions that, you're not prepared to answer, because we're finalizing some things. I think it's a good sign that he didn't show up today, and that they've got to be fine. They've got to be finalizing it. I guess the Jays fan in me is refusing to believe otherwise.
I hope you're right. Could you imagine tomorrow if he isn't signed and he does show up?
If we get nothing, and it's like 9 a.m. and it's still crickets.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God. I wanted to know. Here's what I wanted to know. And I tried calling, and I called, and it was 5:22. So it was 22 minutes late. I didn't think about doing this until after 5 o'clock. I called the Blue Jays, the Dunedin TD Bank ballpark facility.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to get somebody on the phone and ask them if they had seen Ross or Mark today. I was going to say this whole thing about how, covering for a baseball podcast, an online publication, and that I wanted to see if Ross and Mark had been spotted at the facility, and if they had any public statements about Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s widely publicized, deadline.
Yeah.
And I wanted to hear if, Ross and Mark haven't been. I wanted to get that. I wanted to know if Ross and Mark were at the facility today. Because if they weren't, again, tells me maybe they're off somewhere working on something with Vladdy and his agent.
Right.
But again, I was 20 minutes late. They closed the office at 5 o'clock, which means they flipped the switch, and it's automated, automated phone messenger thing. So there was no one to get through. But that would have been interesting to know, because I didn't see anything from. That's the other thing. I was kind of bummed out that Keegan and Ben and Shy and Hazel, like, even if you're not telling us anything, you're telling us something. Even if you have nothing to say, it's something right now.
Yeah,
like,
it's almost too quiet.
Yeah, like,
why
no
is it so
reports of
quiet?
Vladdy. Like, why did nobody just think about it from a journalistic standpoint? Today's the day. Like, had not seen Vladdy at the complex today. Like, that's news. Have not seen Ross or Mark. That's news. Ross and Mark were here at 8, but they were gone by 10. That's news. How did we not get any of that from those guys today?
So what you're saying is, through your detective work, they're not there and something's going on.
That's my hope. My hope is that that they weren't there today. We know Bowden Francis was there. We know Jeff Hoffman was there.
Yeah.
Cool. I want to know about some other guys.
Wow, it takes a Jays fan to be able to turn absolutely no reports or no news and spin it into like the most positive scenario ever, man. I love the train of thought, though. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I want to just even if nothing's happening, tell me nothing's happening today. Like, all eyes. This is like the center of the baseball universe. I know Mike Trout said his thing. He's going to right field, and Devers is crappy that the Red Sox broke their word, and like, that's all fine. But everybody wants to know what's going on around Blue Jays camp today and for the next 12 hours.
Well,
That's what everybody wants to know.
Maybe this will intrigue your interest right here. One of our longtime listeners, Last Duel Gaming, shout out with a $10 donut saying, "Good evening, guys. Vlad already signed. Good news tomorrow.
I
There's
hope
nothing
so.
to worry about."
He put $10 on it, so let's go.
Wow, if
There
he's
you go.
setting over $10, it'd be so awesome. Thank you, Abba Edgar. Thank you, Last Duel Gaming, for
Well, see,
that donut.
that's the other thing. I do believe there are people that probably have a whiff of this, but everyone's just quiet. Like
Right.
there have been a lot of people that are just very optimistic, and whether it's a gut thing. Like I've been I've listened to the last couple shows. I've listened to Johnny from the Gate 14 pod, and he's very like very optimistic about this getting done. And I wonder if we know he knows a lot of people on that team, and he may have word saying, yeah, it's done. Don't worry about it. And but he's not gonna say anything. But he may have, like, he knew Amir Garrett was happening, but he couldn't say anything. I just wonder if and Johnny's just one example, like that there are people that have connections that know things, because there is a optimistic aura out there right now that seems like it's a little higher than it would be expected, and I'm wondering if that's because there's enough whispers from some people in the organization, like Jimmy Garcia's brother posting stuff on social media. Like,
how much do you take of that, by the way? A lot of people were kind of freaking out about that.
I don't know. I don't know what to take from it. The thing that makes you add weight to it is that it's up and then it's gone. That's what adds to the intrigue, is that it's two different posts, and they've both been deleted. So, but that's going to be that's inside the Blue Jays player circle. It's probably the worst kept secret that the deal is either done or not done, because it is top of mind.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I hope that they're preparing. It's all done, and they're preparing for the announcement. They've got, I think about like the Trevor Bauer when he signed with LA video coming out. They're shooting something right now. Like they're preparing for the big announcement. They know this is gonna shock the world. I hope so. But we still got some time to do that. I hope one thing I hope it doesn't happen is it happens at like 3 a.m.
Yeah. Nobody wins in that space at all, man. Now, while we have you, Jim, I know that this is a full-fledged Guerrero stream, but I don't think we've spoken to you in a little while about some of the recent, moves the Jays have made, Max Scherzer, Santander, everything like that. Where are you at right now with this ball team? Projected win total. Do you see upside here? Is there maybe a shot at a wild card berth for the Toronto Blue Jays? What do you think about this? Just the roster overall for 2025.
Yeah, I think this team is better than they were last year. They are an improved club. There's a lot of young talent there that I feel that I'm really excited to see. Who can make a step. But the Anthony Santander signing, like if there wasn't all this drama around Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and they weren't coming off such a down year, I think the Anthony Santander signing would have hit even harder. That is that is such a big addition to this club for what they needed to add him and put him in there with Vladdy, and you expect a Bo bounce back. The Max Scherzer signing, he's all they need him to be is a positive influence to the younger pitchers, and a guy that is pitching at the back end of the bullpen. If they signed Max to be an ace, that would be a problem. But if he can pitch like an ace out of the number 4 spot, then the Jays are in a great spot. It raises the floor is dramatically raised with Max Scherzer. So I in the end, I'm happy with the moves. But again, it hinges on Vladdy. Somebody asked me earlier, they said, what would you grade the Blue Jays offseason if they don't get Vladdy signed? I'm too close to the situation. I said, if they don't sign Vladdy, they don't get the extension done, it's a D. Then it would be an F, but the Santander signing is enough to raise it a full letter grade out of an F to a D. If they get Vladdy extended, it's an A. So much of this is dependent upon that. Again, I really do. But I'm really high on the Santander signing. I think that is a huge boost. You get Bo to bounce back. If you have Bo, Vladdy, and Santander just crushing in that lineup, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, however they want to throw them out there, that would be. I mean, that has the potential to be one of the best trios in baseball
It's a
of any
lineup.
team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. Actually, I want to ask you about Bo Bichette because we asked Nick Alberga about this. What do you make of all the comments that he was saying? Hey, I want to play with Vladdy for life. Do you think that getting Vladdy signed here has any impact, or maybe the Blue Jays transition to looking at Bo Bichette, or is that more just like he had to say it to say it?
I think he had to say it. If you get Vladdy done, then you can focus on Bo. I think Vladdy has to happen first.
Yeah.
If you get Vladdy done, then you can focus on Bo. You can see what he's willing to accept. If he wants $200 million, I don't see that happening for this club.
Yeah.
I would love to see Bo bounce back. I would love to see Bo get extended, but I've just been living in a space where I think it's unrealistic. And you know what? Also, I thought was kind of funny. What if like this Vladdy extension period passes and they don't get a deal done, but then between now and the end of spring training, they announce an extension with Bo Bichette?
That'd be crazy.
Is the fan base going to be excited about that, or are they going to feel like they got the door prize? I really kind of wonder how the fan base is going to feel if they don't get a Vladdy extension done, but before opening day they get one with Bo. I mean, just the ultimate of hypothetical situations to go down. But would there be some general great, not excitement for that kind of a deal?
I think that'd be the biggest curveball ever,
Right?
and I think my answer would be, I guess we'll see what happens, because
you got to think about it. If they don't get a Vladdy extension done, isn't that kind of the next thing to do? It's like, okay, we can't lose both of them, but they traded for Jimenez. Isn't that it makes sense that Andres Jimenez is Bo's replacement? Like having Bo and Andres together at that middle infield for the next 5 or 6 years, and all the money that would be tied into that seems like, again, and it's really more about the Jimenez contract. Taking on the Andres Jimenez contract felt like you were getting ahead of the Bo Bichette free agency. But at the same time, they have made some moves that if you could redo things, Miles Straw, you would undo things that you did first. It's kind of been their offseason.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I mean, that's an interesting thought. Like for me, I think it's Vlad. I'm kind of in the boat of if it's Vlad or it's nobody. Because again, maybe things change. Maybe we go into free agency and Bo had a kick-ass year, and Vladdy was regressed back to what he did in 2023. And then it's okay. And then maybe Bo is now saying, well, I'll accept the deal here for this amount. And for whatever reason, we don't understand the logic of the, Ross Atkins, Mark Shapiro era. And they give Bo the money. I mean, they've done some weird logical things past. I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, the Bo Bichette from the 3 years prior. So, the 21, 22, and 23 Bo Bichette was awesome. And that's a guy I would love to have hang around. And I think part of the drop in interest is A, everyone wants Vladdy extended, and B, Bo's coming off a terrible year. But if Bo Bichette has a bounce back year, he will be a guy that will command $175 to $200 million in the offseason.
Yeah. 100%.
And if he's going to be a guy who's going to, remember, he led the league in hits 2 years in a row, and he almost did it for a third time. That's a great hitter to have on a team. And if you're not going to have Vladdy, and you can still do something with Bo, I think you do it. I just wonder what the perception would be in the public eye if no Vladdy extension happens and they get done with Bo. If there's just an underwhelmed fan base, or if they'd be excited that, hey, we're not losing both of them at least.
Right. At least we got one. But you're right. If you're confused about this management, you'd be definitely confused in that scenario right there, Jim. So Jim, before you go, because we got you on here for about half an hour, any last thoughts, any last predictions for this Blue Jays season coming up? Are you feeling optimistic that we've got the over-under for Betway win total for the Toronto Blue Jays at 78.5? Do you feel optimistic we're smashing that over?
Yes, this is a team that is going to fight for a playoff spot, and they will really. I think their chances of making the wild card will depend on what they do at the trade deadline. I think they are good enough to be in the mix at the end of July. So then, what is the impact move that puts them over the top, that gets them locked into a wild card spot? I think this is a playoff or bust team. There are World Series or bust teams. There are playoff or bust teams. This is especially if it's last season for Bo and Vladdy. This is playoffs or bust. So give me the over on that over under number. And again, if they make it, might be dependent upon the trade deadline.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Jim. Jim, thank you so much for coming in. If you guys
Hey,
don't
guys.
know Jim Riley, he is the host of Ball Cap Sports on YouTube. Go check it out. Subscribe to his channel. Talks all about MLB. And of course, a big Blue Jays fan and a longtime supporter of Blue Jays today. Jim, thank you so much for coming in today, man. We appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. Go Jays.
Go
Jays! There was Jim Riley. We love him, guys. Seriously, go check out his stuff. He is phenomenal. I've been checking Twitter feverishly.
Yeah, I know. I was kind of peeking over. Like,
there is nothing new that is coming out right now. It is legitimately dead.
Take what you want from Jim Riley, Detective Jim over there. Is quiet a good thing? Is quiet a good thing? It's too quiet. Maybe the fact that Ross Atkins didn't show up, or we don't know that actually. Is that a good thing? You know, like we'll see. Also, guys, if you haven't already hit that like button and subscribe to Blue Jays Today. I think we're not even at 300 likes yet, and we got 1,000 people in here. So make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to Blue Jays Today, because we're going live for a little bit. It's quiet. If we have to stop the live stream at some point just because of how dead it is, and there's nothing to talk about, because that was our lineup of guests there tonight, we'll be back for the extension.
Yeah, no, honestly, it feels like that is going to happen sooner rather than later, just because there is literally nothing. Mom is the word, dude. And honestly, like I hadn't thought about what it was that Jim was saying there. Like maybe the Toronto Blue Jays are just doing a great job at like, you know, making sure this does not get out.
Right.
It's just like it. I guess I keep coming back to the fact, like, well, why is Hector Gomez not saying anything? Like we know that guy will, you know, like somebody is gonna say something because they want to be the first to do it, right? And that to me, it's like, okay, yeah, like you're definitely you want to keep it, you know, out of the media's eye, but I find it hard to believe that nobody's going to say anything if it's actually happening, if it's getting close, you know what I mean? Like somebody's got to know something here.
Yeah, and I really like Jim brought up there as well. He was talking about like, you know, what makes him feel confident is the fact that everybody else is talking about it. You know, we had Jose Barrios come out and talk about it. I'm pretty sure this was in Keegan Matheson. Oh my god, I almost mispronounced his name. Keegan Matheson's article. Oh yeah, right here. I can't even flip it over right now, but you know, Jose saying obviously it's gonna be a big deal for us to play our teammate, keeping him on the team for many, many years. I mean, that's also another thing, totally sidetracking the conversation, but Jose Barrios, like he's got a player opt out. Like if you sign Vladdy, he probably keeps it, you know, depending on how he's playing, of course, you know, because he's going to be into his mid 30s at that point. Like, you know, you want to keep him too? Sign Guerrero. That's a great thing.
Dude, that's the thing, man. Like if they don't extend Vladimir Guerrero Jr., it's just like, what was that Santander signing for?
That's what I'm also saying
like,
too.
What was any of this shit?
Because what we've been saying is like this offseason is like an A-, and I think it's an A- with the idea that you keep Vladdy at the end of this all. But right, if you don't keep him, okay, well obviously Scherzer goes.
Yeah.
You have Andres Menes replacing Bo Bichette. I mean, that's kind of like you're taking a little bit of an L there. Maybe if you like defense, you're not. But then,
I think you're taking a big fucking L there,
right? Unless you're like, you know, defensively expert. It all depends on the WAR, I guess. If you're a big WAR guy, but anyways, point being is if you have Anthony Santander, well, he's your guy now,
right?
It's gonna be what's the lineup gonna look like? George Springer than Anthony Santander? Like that's terrible.
Yeah, like that's the thing. You're not building around Anthony Santander. Anthony Santander is a complimentary piece, a very nice complimentary piece, and somebody that, you know, like being a cleanup hitter could hit, you know, 40 bombs, and like we'd be feeling really, really good about that. But
it's good if Guerrero's there.
Yeah, like without Vladdy, I don't know what this team is anymore. It's just like a weird amalgamation of guys that, you know, somehow all ended up here. We're nothing anyway. We don't know.
Scott Farr says it's just enough for fans to keep coming in, Nick. I mean, here's the thing. Maybe we're too deep into the Jays and we see right through them and everything, but like, really, I'm not fooled by this.
Yeah, that's the thing.
You know,
I actually don't think so, Scott. Like, I genuinely do believe, and I know that people say this about a bunch of guys, but you know, they always fucking say this. But I actually think that people are going to stop watching and or stop paying attention or stop coming if Vladdy doesn't sign, and they might not even be conscious of it. But like, that's just one of those things that, you know, you start to tune out a little bit, right? Like that's your franchise guy. And, you know, maybe, that's what I mean. Like you're not conscious of it anymore because the media stops covering them as much, and just across the board, I do believe that viewership is going to take a dip. It's going to take a hit should Guerrero walk in free agency and go somewhere else. So
yeah, I agree. Also, someone in the chat saying agreement's been reached. Now, guys, the agreement has not been reached. I have been on the Twitter sphere, and nothing has been coming out.
No, I haven't seen anything, everybody. Right now, it is dead quiet, folks. So this is honestly something that could end up. This could go right to midnight. This could go right to midnight.
And if it happens at midnight, we're going live.
We're going live for it, everybody.
This is the biggest moment. That would be the biggest moment in, I think, this entire channel and Blue Jays today history. You know what I mean? Other than the biggest one was Ohtani fooling us, but that's an L.
Yeah,
I want a W.
No, I want a W, right?
I want a W.
Look, again, I do genuinely believe that, and this isn't even an exaggeration to say, like, I think that what happens tonight, and yeah, I guess you could argue it could still happen in free agency, whatever. But Vladimir Guerrero Jr. staying or going, that's going to determine, at the very least, in my opinion, the next 5 years. Maybe not the whole next decade, right? Maybe not enough, but the next 5 years. Who are you? You're probably selling. You're probably rebuilding. You're probably retooling. If you don't have them, you're probably looking for another Vladdy to come up to get on a deep a rookie contract. You're looking for that. You're looking to draft and develop. That's what you're looking for. Should you sign Guerrero, it's the complete opposite. We are in on the free agency. We are in at the trade deadline buying, not selling, buying. We are trying to make a play for the division year in and year out. Guerrero going means that, we're going to be back to where we were, the 2017 Blue Jays,
there's a clear fork in the road. It's time to decide which one we're going down. Are we going to go down the path of continuing to compete? Because if I'm Rogers Communication, I'm thinking, I want to compete. I just spent a lot of effing money on this gosh darn stadium,
right? And
on this team with one of the highest payrolls. Let's keep competing. If we don't have them, we ain't doing that. We're getting rid of it all. And then what the hell was this all for?
Well, and that's why I think like a trade for him is just going to be that much more difficult, because even if it makes perfect sense, like from a managerial standpoint and just like bringing in assets and stuff, like the amount of hate that you're going to get from Toronto fans. Like,
I'll do it. I'll hate it.
Oh yeah,
I'll
dude.
be the
100%. Like, it's over now.
Actually, Jen Smith will be the loudest.
Yeah, Jen Smith will definitely. 100% should be the loudest, as she should be, right? But I mean, like, look at, and it's to a lesser extent, but like, look at what Dallas fans are doing with, with Luka Doncic and stuff like that. Right now, to a lesser extent, because that came out of fucking nowhere, and they were like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah,
but like, it's kind of the same idea where it's like, why did you just let your franchise player go? Like, no one does that, right? And yes, they got a very, very good player in return, but that was your guy. This is who you build around. What the hell are you doing?
I know.
And it's the same thing that happens here. Like, you have an opportunity right now to keep your version of Luka Doncic, right? Okay, like, that's the comparison I make. Maybe it's not direct comparison, fine,
I think
but it's
kind
like
of good, actually.
Like, this is your guy, and you got to keep him.
Like, imagine like they traded I guess in ways that you look at it, but like, I don't know. It's different because in basketball, like the whole contract situation with Luka, like it's kind of similar where he was like, I'm ready to be here long term and be here for the rest of my life. I guess it's the same thing with Vladdy. Imagine you just traded him for, like, I don't want to say Mike Trout because he has he's locked down for long term, but imagine like Mike Trout, but like not as committed.
Right.
It's like, I get it.
Yeah.
But
like, the guy's awesome, but what are we doing?
What are
here?
we have Varsho, we have George Springer and Mike Trout.
Yeah.
What's going on? And like, what's going on right here?
No, it doesn't make any sense.
Point being, guys, is things are going to go very south very quick if Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is not a Blue Jay. So a little bit later tonight, we'll just keep the whole set here. Everything's set up, because as soon as Vladdy it'd only be a signing. As soon as Vladdy signs, we'll be right here back live.
Exactly, folks. Let's pray that logic prevails tonight. It doesn't always, but please, Blue Jays, like, just do it for us this one time. If you haven't already done so, please hit the like, smash the subscribe button. Thank you so much for get a little bit of like breadcrumbs or something.
Right.
That hasn't been the case. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's not a good thing. The second that we hear anything, we are going to be back here. Shout out to everybody that tuned into this thing. You guys are the best. Thanks so much for watching. And as always,
go Jays, go!
And pay this man. Pay him.
Pay his fine.
Pay him.
No.